Hello, everybody. Hello, my fellow sensitive people. Glad to have you back on the channel. Today we're going to be doing a remote viewing about some of the stuff that's been going on. I did a very long remote viewing last night. I have a lot of stuff to go over. It's extremely interesting, and I'm going to be able to answer some of the questions that people had about where I think the administration is going, where I think this presidency is headed, and a couple of other things that happened last excuse me, a couple of other things that happened last night during last night's meditation. For the students, for the people who are trying to learn the empathy technique, I'm happy to answer any questions you have here on this channel to other readers, other empaths, other professional psychics, and people who are in training. Absolutely, it's free. If you have any questions about the technique, if you feel so inclined, you can either donate to the channel, but more than that, we'd rather you donate to the ACLU and to RACIS, which is helping children at the border. Also, if you can donate to organizations that help foster children, if you feel that this channel and the training you're receiving to do empathy work is worth it. If you're getting something out of the training, then please think about donating to those causes. All right, now let's get on with the show. A lot of people just want to get on with the remote, so that's exactly what we're going to do today. So in last night's remote, which I started early last night, I started the remote at about 8 p.m. and it went on for a very long time. I find that listening to a little John Coltrane lately is really inspiring. Thank you to everyone who's been making music suggestions for my nightly meditations. I don't know much about jazz, and so now people are recommending Miles Davis, John Coltrane, a few other of the jazz icons, and I'm really enjoying meditating to it, and much to my surprise, it's been very, very helpful. So yes, please continue making music suggestions for my nightly meditations. It is helping, and for those jazz enthusiasts who watch this channel, you are right. Jazz is pretty amazing, and it does really remarkable things in the meditative state. All right, let's get on with the show. So the first thing that came through last night as I entered the meditative state and began to meditate on the current administration, the first people who came in and tuned in were young interns and employees of the Trump re-election campaign, and they are now releasing the early results for polling out of some of the states. And they're willing, excuse me, I need to turn this off. I've got Tawny talking to me. Not right now, Miss Tawny. By the way, thank you for encouraging her, because I really think she needs to have her own channel she's a human rights activist with the LGBTQ community, and it would be great if we could encourage her to have her own channel. So thank you everyone who supported Tawny. As you can see, she's pretty happy about showing up with us the other day. Okay, so according to the early polling that is coming out of the Trump campaign, the first thing they wanted to talk about was the polling they did out of Florida. And they said that they are in serious trouble in Florida, that the early returns coming out of Florida show that he has dropped in key districts in Florida that he won in 2016, he's dropped as much as 9 points in solid red districts. So when I asked what the main problem was with Florida, like why there was a 9-point drop in like areas of Dade County, etc., where there was extreme drops, but in areas of Miami, the more conservative areas of Florida, the drops seem to be amongst seniors, and specifically in the Jewish community in Florida. The fact that children are in cages, it's not polling well amongst seniors, and particularly seniors in the Jewish community, that helped, that extra 1 or 2% that helped pull Trump over the top in Florida. He's really in trouble in Florida, and specifically in the senior and in the Jewish community in Florida. But in those key areas, they said he had had a drop of up to 9 points, and in some areas even worse than that. So the early pollsters working for the Trump campaign are feeling pretty discouraged by what they're finding out. Also, they said that there were dramatic drops in Pennsylvania, key areas of Pennsylvania, that many people in the Midwest are not happy with the jobs report. They don't feel that their lives are better, and things are more expensive than ever. So he's also having trouble in parts of the Midwest. It looks like he's losing, as of the polling I got into last night, he's losing key areas of Pennsylvania and key areas of Florida, and he's in very serious trouble, believe it or not, with the evangelical Christian community. And in that community, he's taking hits in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia. He's getting the hardest hits. In key areas of the Midwest, Iowa, Indiana, parts of the Midwest, and believe it or not, Missouri, the weather is hitting him hard. Extreme weather is playing an impact on his administration because people are in serious trouble. Key parts of Maryland as well. The other thing that came in is, in addition to extreme weather, the other thing that took him out in Iowa and other areas of the Midwest was the trade wars. So again, the message we're getting, and should be released in the next week or two, is that early polling for this administration is dire. And it was just that they got hit by 4 or 5 things all at once. And in addition to all these things coming out at once, the next thing coming out is that the state of New York will be releasing Trump's taxes. So this is yet again another hit for the Trump team. So we've got all of the factors that I just talked about causing major drops in key districts in the states that I had mentioned. And in addition to that, we now have the investigation out of New York. And I'll be reading a statement from Epstein because Epstein did come in last night, and I want to also give trigger warnings to my fellow empaths and survivors that you may want to not hear the message from Epstein because it could trigger you. But I will be reading a statement from Jeffrey Epstein. All right, so I also tuned into Nancy Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi said that this is pretty much what she had predicted, that Trump would destroy himself with 1,000 paper cuts, and that what she had said before he had walked into the White House was that he would destroy himself, and that her responsibility was to bide time, block and obstruct anything this administration was trying to do that was going to harm the Constitution, prevent Congress from engaging in oversight, and basically, while protecting the Constitution, engaging in oversight, minimize the amount of damage of this administration until Trump inevitably destroyed himself. That was Pelosi's passive way of handling this administration. After that, Mitch McConnell came in during the meditation, and Mitch McConnell had said that that is precisely why he wants to go to the nuclear option when it comes to judges. And we know, because every time we go into the meditative state, we always hear the same thing from Mitch McConnell. It's all about the courts. It's all about the courts. It's all about the courts. And so the true colors of Mitch McConnell, now that it's D-Day, is that he's now going to push the nuclear option because it's all about the courts. It's all about the courts. Like I said, it was a busy night last night. I didn't get much sleep. It's like a 4-hour meditation. Okay, then Barr came in, and because remember when we did the meditation on Barr, where I was going in and looking at Barr in order to demonstrate the meditative state for people on camera, for those students, for those empaths who are using this technique in their own professional lives, etc., etc. Okay, so Bill Barr had said that he wants to be allowed to do his job. The more look, I'm putting it on the back burner. I'll wait and see how it plays itself out. But there's a feeling I'm getting when I go into the energy of Bill Barr, and I want to know what my other empaths are saying. and my other readers who watch this channel, if you're getting the same thing. It's almost as if Barr was brought in to give Trump time until the inevitable happened, which is a form of obstruction. In plainer words, everybody knew that it was only a matter of time before it all came out. Everybody knew where this train was headed. And the purpose of Bill Barr was to simply slow things down. So when Bill Barr and when Rosenstein talk about landing the plane, it's really about making a smooth landing for what could be a devastating crash of this administration, which is that you ease people in slowly to the inevitable truth that this president is not long for this White House. So Barr, when we went into his remotes 4, 5, 6 months ago, he kept talking about, my function is to give the president time to decide what he wants to do, give Mitch McConnell time to push his conservative agenda, etc., etc., etc. The courts, the courts, the courts. Now, if that is an accurate version, and I'm not saying it is, but I am saying that we should all, as empaths, put it on the back burner and let's see how it plays itself out. If that's true, then Barr couldn't save Trump even if he wanted to. He couldn't save Trump even if he wanted to, but what he can do is he can do a lot of damage by slowing down the inevitable conclusion of where this investigation is headed. And if that's true, then he's worked out some kind of deal with the prosecution and also with Mueller, if this is true. So we're seeing a delay, but the inevitable, as Nancy Pelosi said, the inevitable is going to happen, and that this presidency is not long for this world. And it would go back to what Pelosi said about Trump destroying Trump and death by 1,000 paper cuts. Now, while all of this is going on, New York is going to be releasing Trump's tax returns. Understand that everybody in D.C. knew that all of this was going to happen. They saw what was going on with New York. They saw what was going on with SDNY. They saw what was going on with Cohen. They knew things were boiling with Epstein, Costa. People knew where this was headed, but they were hoping that they could push as many conservative judges and extreme conservative agenda as much as possible to at least give themselves some leeway till the inevitable happened. That's how it looks. In terms of where the GOP is headed in the coming weeks, I still see them jumping ship. They're out of there, and they're out of there because they have to save their own campaigns. To be quite honest with you, I thought they'd be out of there in June because they don't have a lot of time to be setting up their re-election campaigns. And if they're attached to this administration, where this administration is heading, that's bad news. So most of them pulled the ripcord in June and July. Now, when you follow energy, you can try and make a rough estimate, a rough prediction of what you think is going to happen. Like, well, August. It's like somebody had said, well, Whimsy, sometimes you remote view like a doctor, maybe because of your medical training. I think that's cool. That's one way to view it. I don't want to, if a patient is sick or if a patient is terminal, we're not supposed to say, yeah, September's your last month, enjoy your vacation in Bermuda. We don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. What we can say is the situation is very serious. If it continues on this trajectory, this is the most likely outcome. And that's pretty much how I read. So with everything that I look at in terms of the energy, I've always said that the most likely outcome is that the president will resign in exchange for getting off in some way. Some way he's going to either avoid prosecution or maybe make a sweetheart deal for himself and some of his children. I still see Don Jr. possibly taking a hit for this administration. that's just how it looks to me. There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, and that is last and not to be the least, that favorite part of the world that we all love and know, certainly the Oracle of Whimsy. The Oracle of Whimsy enjoys hanging out there, and that's Mongolia! Mongolia, Mongolia, Mongolia. When I first decided to take remote viewing using the heart-centered technique onto YouTube, we went through a really fun period for about 2 weeks where we were reconstituting old Soviet propaganda just to see if we could get in. And not surprisingly, many people were private messaging me to see if I was okay. Because we were talking about how great it was for the Soviets to march into Mongolia. And I actually learned a lot from channeling old Soviet propaganda about Mongolia, but I'll go ahead and repeat it here for people who want to know the Soviet line about entering Mongolia. They had said, here are the benefits of the Soviet occupation of Mongolia. They said, number one, that they were able to bring food aid to areas where there wasn't enough food for, not everybody in Mongolia had enough food because there were limitations of trade routes, weather conditions, etc. So the first thing that the Soviets did was they brought needed food supplies to depressed areas in Mongolia. That was the first thing they said. The second thing they said is that they brought medical aid. And they said that the life expectancy for children in Mongolia had increased under Soviet occupation because they had brought in medical supplies and vaccination. The third thing that was great about the Soviet occupation of Mongolia is that they brought in the Soviet educational system, and evidently prior to that, Mongolia had a high illiteracy rate. And so the third benefit of the Soviet occupation was literacy, and that they began to bring in the Soviet standards for education, which they were very proud of. And then finally, the fourth thing they brought in was they brought in infrastructure and jobs, which helped increase the economics of people in the area. So that is the Soviet propaganda of why it was good for the Soviets to go into Mongolia. Why the heck did we get all that information 4 to 6 months ago in the collective consciousness? Like, why were we pulling it up, and why did Whimsy have to recite it for 2 weeks? Well, we now know that Bolton is in Mongolia. We know that tensions are rising between China and Russia, and we know that Mongolia shares borders between China and Russia, and that it is an important trade route for both Russia and China, and that historically they have warred over that region. Let us see how it plays itself out. It is interesting to see how the wheel of energy does what it does, and that basically brings us now to the Epstein meditation, which was the last thing I did last night. And again, I'm going to give a trigger warning to survivors. If you want to go ahead and turn off this section, that's quite all right. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. For those of you who are not going to be triggered, I'm going to go ahead and read what Jeffrey Epstein has to say to us in the meditative state. He says, yes, I have a black book, and yes, I have tapes. Do you think I am stupid? How do you think I avoided going to jail all these years? I bribed people. Anybody that could be bribed, I bribed. I bribed certain people in the New York police commissioner's offices, certain people in positions of political power, countless lawyers and judges. I even bribed international business persons and politicians. This allowed me to remain virtually anonymous for years. He's threatening that he is going to release his little black books. He says he has up to 400 names that would be of great interest to the DA of New York. And he said that he's willing to make a deal. That's the remote on Jeffrey Epstein. Like I said, it was pretty dark, so I wanted to make sure to give trigger warnings before reading it. Okay, so I'm not going to do cards today because I really didn't sleep much last night because, as you can see, it was a really intense remote viewing. Thank you, everyone who wants to learn the heart-centered meditation technique. And if you have any more questions about how I do the technique, please put them below, and we will do Q&As in the future. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time.